Should we ask them, or should I just...
Yeah, you may ask.
Okay.
Yeah. What is the best way? Should I introduce you, or what is the best way of...
Should you? Well, you could, or she could.
Okay. Yeah.
Or...
It makes much easier for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let her
because
do it.
I think I don't know as much as...
Yeah, no, we know each other well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm probably a bit of a mystery.
It's coming.
Хорошо, ну тогда, наверное, лучше перевод. Для начала...
Может быть, как без перевода?
С перевода начнем, да?
Если if something complicated which is difficult to understand, maybe at that moment.
Okay.
Because it takes time. Yeah, and
Yes, if somebody don't understand something, just let us know. Okay, so let me introduce our guest today. Richard Naismith is a spiritual master in the Vedic spiritual tradition dating back to thousands of years. This tradition has its root in India and it's branched out throughout the world in recent years. And and he can say more about it himself.
Okay, thank you. Well, anyway, she studied here. And, oh, wow. I'm overwhelmed. Thank you very much. Yeah, she studied here English. Английский язык. И немецкий тоже. What did you think of her English when she introduced me? Anyway, let's not get into it, but there were a couple of mistakes. But it's okay. She's good. Okay, well, hi, everyone. Nice to be here with you. Hope you're doing okay.
They say in this point that there is nothing to do.
So let's try with me speaking in English. You know, English is my mother tongue, so it's pretty simple for me. I'll try and keep it simple, you know, relatively, as much as I can. If there are any kind of technical terms, they probably, because I'm going to focus on the subject of Vedic culture. Are you aware of that? You're aware of what I'm meant to be talking about? Vedic culture, an ancient culture which has been, well, you know, the proper word would probably be transposed. Imagine. Transposed. Kind of placed, you know, on, not exactly on top of, but interjected into. Are you with me? just testing, into, you know, other cultures, like a Western culture. I'm born in New Zealand, some years, 7 years or so, and then now I'm based in South Africa, yeah, where they also speak English, you know, accented English. So, yeah, English. So this Vedic culture has its roots in India. You mentioned that? Yeah, she mentioned that. Has its roots historically in India. Or even actually, if we're going to be, you know, try to be really accurate, you just say Southeast Asia. Nowadays there's the country India, you know, there it is on the map. But up until what, 47, I think? I don't think any of us were around in 47. I had not arrived yet. So it was bigger. It was bigger than it is now. Pakistan, Bangladesh, they were part of India. Then, thank you. Yamago Gavare Paraske, Church, Neo Chikarasha, Yamago, Kakrabianak, Tree, Board, Chiteri, something like that. Please, have a seat, relax. So, yeah, the Vedic culture, you know, you could say in simple terms, it's just the old, ancient, traditional culture of India. But up until some time ago, it was spread right throughout. Even Afghanistan, if you know your geography, you know, next you've got India, you've got Pakistan, next country's Afghanistan. If you're going the other way towards Australia, towards New Zealand, then Burma, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia was following, Malaysia just as an example, was following Vedic culture until 900 years ago. And Indonesia, have you heard of Bali? Bali, famous holiday place. Many Russians go there. Transaero used to fly there when they existed. So in Bali, which is part of Indonesia, it's an island of, I think, plus or minus 4 million people. They still follow Vedic culture. It is just the way they live in Bali. It used to be throughout Indonesia, but you know, now it's more just restricted to Bali and a couple of other places here and there. How are we doing? Is my English okay? Nie очень сложно. Yeah, I can make it more сложно. So what I'm saying then is that when we talk about Vedic culture, it really was, until some hundreds of years ago, you know, there was a gradual process of like disintegration, breaking up throughout Southeast Asia. But it was the dominant culture in Southeast Asia and still is in India. Yeah, and to varying degrees, like Thailand. Any of you been to Thailand? Not yet. Anyway, nice place, nice place. but a lot of their drama, dance, even though they're not really following Vedic culture as such, like throughout the society, but the drama, the dance, it's all from Vedic culture. Have you ever heard of a book called Ramayana? Not. Okay.
I suppose
It's
you've
an-
heard.
Like in Tatar culture, Ramadan.
Ramayana. Not Ramadan, that's Islamic. Ramayana. So it's a very ancient historical literature, part of Vedic culture. And in Thailand, the main dramas, they're all based on Ramayana. And they're very amazing, very beautiful. So it's a very ancient culture which was spread throughout Southeast Asia, although now it's concentrated in India, and therefore people tend to think that it's Indian culture. But as I said, it has been transposed, kind of, you could almost say, sort of like interjected into other cultures, including Russia, would you believe? Yeah, including Russia and where I'm from, New Zealand, and all these places. So in other words, there is a type of flexibility in it that it can be, if not really molded, I mean to some degree molded, but it can be applied. It can be applied in practically any type of cultural or social environment. Yeah. So let me just tell you a little bit about what it is, and feel free at any point, if anything strikes you as being particularly interesting, or maybe you can't follow, you'd like clarification, feel free, just stick your hand up. Otherwise, if you prefer a greater degree of anonymity, can you imagine? Being anonymous, unknown, you can write something down in English. Let me check your English. Or in Russian, and if I can't understand, she will. So, okay, so here, and I don't want to get into too much technical stuff because it can become very technical. But we're talking about a very ancient, God-centered culture. When I say God-centered, I mean that the presence of God was kind of like pervaded the culture in, well, I mentioned in Thailand, which used to be part of it, but still the drama and dance, particularly these things, the traditional local dance and drama is to a very large extent straight out of Vedic culture, particularly Ramayana, which is historical. It's like a narrative about a certain person's life and what he did. And Mahabharata, well, they're more Ramayana, but then there's also Mahabharata, longest poem in the world, according to the Guinness Book of Records, 110,000 verses. That's quite a few verses. So yeah, God-centered, and that the presence of God kind of pervaded the culture to such a degree that, like, all the names, some people, they have a child, and the child would inevitably get a name of God as their name. You know, I don't know so much in Russia. I mean, I know the names. I know there's so many Sergeys. I've met many, what do you call them? Serozhas, is it? So many Mashas. We've been inundated with Mashas and Ludmilas, Ludas. I met a Regina today, first time in Russia. So, but like in English, in the culture of England and New Zealand, is kind of very English. We have what at least used to be called Christian names: John, Paul, Mary, Mark, and these were the popular names, but they're names of saints, right? You must be familiar with the Bible and all that. But they were the very popular names. I don't think people really, when they gave their children names, like in English, the most popular name generally is John, but it's a name of a saint, John the Baptist, and like that. But generally people wouldn't really think that, yes, here we have this child, this boy, what name are we going to give him? We're going to give him the name of a saint. We're going to call him John because it'll be good for him, in a type of spiritual sense. It's just a popular name. But in Vedic culture, I'm sure it has its roots in English, in that idea that there's some type of holiness connected with them, directly or indirectly. But in the Vedic culture, as it still exists, it's also disintegrated to quite some degree in India, but it's still fairly predominant. But names of God are given. You'll find, like, I can give you some examples. The name Krishna, the name Vishnu for men, boys, the name Radha, Lakshmi. I don't know if you've heard these names before at all, but they're names of God, different forms of God, again, I don't want to get too much into the theology, and I don't know how much interest you have in theology, but just in a cultural sense, like Radha, Lakshmi, these are names for females. They're female names. And Radha, is an abbreviation of the name, the term, Sanskrit term, Radha Rani. Rani means queen, and Radha means worshipper, the queen of all worshippers of God. But it's such a popular name today. I don't know how many Radhas I know, but I really know a lot. So a God-centered type of civilization, culture, and then like the literature. Nowadays, politically, India is supposedly secular. Secular? I'd imagine. No religion. It's just, just people living. And there's no attachment like in, like particularly places like Saudi Arabia, Pakistan. They're officially Muslim, and that's it. So India is a secular state. So nowadays there's a great, or to some degree, an increase in secularism in art and like movies, literature. It's a lot of it, or some of it, is kind of like almost typical Western stuff, just, you know, men and women and this and that, and just daily goings on in life. But traditionally, the literature practically exclusively was God-centered. Maybe a somewhat different conception of God to say what I was brought up with in New Zealand and yourselves brought up here in Russia. But still, no less, a conception of God. Yeah. You know, like the source of everything, the cause of all causes, the controller of everything, and God, that sort of idea. So Vedic culture, the literature going back in Southeast Asia and particularly India, the literature you'd find was either actual scripture or like commentary on scripture, elaboration on scripture, discussion on different points in scripture. You follow? That was the literature. It really was the literature. And there was not very much else. Having said that, you know, having been brought up a Christian myself, and I was born in an Anglican family, and from the day I turned 5, would you believe? The day I turned 5, I started at an Anglican school until a few months, 3 months perhaps, after I turned 17. I graduated from high school. In New Zealand, what's called UE, University Entrance Exam. So I passed that, but the whole time, from 5, the day I turned 5, until 17 and a bit, I was educated in an Anglican school. You know, Christian, somewhat different from Pravoslavia. Let's not go down that road too much, you know, but basically the same sort of general school, obviously. And we had what we called divinity classes, Bible classes. It was called divinity on the schedule every day. So, you know, in other words, even though I'm kind of into another culture in many ways now, but, you know, I've really been through at least the Anglican version of Christianity and learnt a lot and I still consider myself a serious Christian. So, but here now, these are conceptions of God which in some respects are a little different. In many respects, like the very fundamental respects that I mentioned of being the cause of all causes, the source, the controller of everything. Now, these are very universal ideas, obviously. But in Vedic culture, let me just mention a couple of things in terms of conception of God. I think you'll find this very interesting. Is that the main term or the first term used for God, like the equivalent of the English word God or the Russian word Bog, right? Or, you know, French, say Dieu. And, well, I'm based in South Africa. And there we have the Zulus. You heard of the Zulus? They're black African people. it's the main tribe or race. You know, the word tribe is a little bit of a pejorative. Can you imagine? Pejorative. It is a little denigrating. Denigrating means it's kind of, you know, putting people down a bit. Yeah. It's like putting people, it's like calling Americans Yanks. Bunch of Yanks. Or calling English a bunch of limeys. Or Italians, maybe I shouldn't even mention it, but a bunch of wogs or something like that. So, yeah, so we don't use the word tribe because it means, you know, they're natives. These, you know, primitives just took them out of the jungle a little while ago. The so-called noble savage. Have you heard that term before? I forget who came up with that. The noble savage, but he's still a savage. So, but anyway, the nations, Zulus are the main, like, local indigenous nation in South Africa. They also have a word for God, or term. That's what I was leading up to. And I want to ask you if you know what is the term for God in Zulu. Here you're going to learn something. The term for God in Zulu language is Nkulunkulu. How's that? Etaprata. Nkulunkulu. Notice the pronunciation. Nkulunkulu. Yeah. Nkulunkulu. Like that. Which means, here's something interesting. I mean, we're a little off subject, I realize, but it means he who possesses the most cows. Anyway, you digest that for a while. But God possesses the most of everything, so he probably possesses the most cows also. And they count wealth in terms of cows. And if a young man wants to marry a young woman, he has to give at least one cow. But like I said, we're off subject. But it also can mean, Nkulunkulu, can mean he who is, take a guess, he who is the coolest person. So there are different names of God as you go around. And in the Vedic tradition, the most sort of basic, popular type of foundational term for or name of, term for actually, descriptive term, which is adopted or accepted as a name, is Krishna. How are we doing for English? Are you with me? Is anyone sort of, you know, struggling? Because we have Nash Peravache. Anna Bela. What do you say? Uchinica, is it? It's Dance Toja. Yeah. Yes, we Khatija. And Krishna, this is very interesting culturally, Vedic culture. It's very, very interesting. It's not exactly a name. You know, it's adopted and applied as a name, but basically what it is, how it has come about is, it is a descriptive term. It's a descriptive term, and it means the all-attractive person, or that person who has all attractive qualities in full. Think about that too. I mean, that's food for thought. That's really a good one. And when I was at university actually in New Zealand, 1972, April 1972, when I first contacted Vedic culture. My spiritual master visited the university, I think it was April the 14th, 72. Where were you on April the 14th, 1972? Or any time in April? Or any time in 72? You know what Vedic culture would say? I'll tell you what Vedic culture would say. And this probably will or may conflict with certain, ideas which may be set in your mind to whatever degree. But Vedic culture would say that you, and you too, were in your previous lifetimes. How's that? Wow. Okay. Anyway, you're intelligent people. You know what they told me, and I mean her. You know what she told me? I'll tell you what she told me. She told me, the students here are very intelligent. Seriously. That's what she told me. And very thoughtful. So I'm just presenting these things in that context. You understand? That I'm assuming you're like that, and that you'll be able to sort of, think about some ideas which might otherwise or might normally conflict with, right? Conflict with certain ideas which you've been brought up with, or you just sort of accept. I'm not offending anyone, am I, so far? I hope not. Okay, so look, that's interesting, isn't it? This is Vedic culture. One of the most popular names today in India, when people, parents give birth to a child, it's right up there somewhere near the top of the list, is Krishna. But it's a descriptive term, it describes God, the person who has all attractive qualities in full. Is that a reasonable description of God, would you think? Anyway, think about it. It may, I realize it may be something new to you. Or here's another one. Popular, really popular, is Rama or Ram. The old culture of Southeast Asia, but today particularly India, it's based in Sanskrit language. Have you heard? Especially? No? Sanskrit? No. Starting Язык. A really ancient language, which is not used like conversationally, socially, is not used. There are a couple of villages which, just as like social experiments, linguistic experiments, villages means maybe 100 people or so, they have adopted Sanskrit and they only use Sanskrit, but it's like a social experiment. Yeah.
In South Africa?
No, sorry, India. In India. They have adopted Sanskrit as a type of social experiment, just to see how it goes, if it's practical, if it works. But the Vedic culture, the old culture of Southeast Asia, is the language is Sanskrit. And even, here's an interesting idea for you, if you ever make it to Malaysia, you'll find that, in Malaysia, they're the local people, they're the Malays. But there's a lot of Chinese there for business. There's a lot of Indians who are brought there to work on the rubber plantations, but now they're just merged into Malay society. Here's something interesting. A local Malay is called, in Malay, a Bhumi Putra. That's Sanskrit. It's pure Sanskrit. Bhumi means earth. Putra means son. Putra and Putri. Yeah. Son, daughter. Right. So again, Rama, very, very popular name. But it's a descriptive term describing God, adopted, accepted, applied as a name. Rama means the source of all pleasure. That's God, right? Must be. Source of everything, including all pleasure. Here's another interesting, slightly technical point. Krishna is considered a higher level name because the concept of God as all attractive, possessing all attractive qualities in full, is more comprehensive. Comprehensive? Right. Comprehensive than just being the source of all pleasure. Source of all pleasure, pretty important. But that's included in the context of, possessing all attractive qualities, all attractive features. So Vedic culture. Now, you may have heard, I assume you must have heard, of the caste system. C-A-S-T-E. Caste system. It's well known, and it's not appreciated for good reason. But the foundational basic conception behind what has over the centuries kind of developed into or regressed into the caste system, it is a very important part of Vedic culture. Caste system means there are 4 main castes with many subdivisions, but there are 4 main castes. First is called in Sanskrit Brahman. Have you heard of Brahman? Yeah. Very good. Congratulations. So Brahman, and we're talking Sanskrit here. Brahman means like intellectual, scholarly, teacher, not necessarily absolutely, but would include priestly. People who are priests would be Brahmins. Then not all Brahmins would necessarily be priests. So, look, kind of like yourselves, the brains of society. And then the next caste is called Kshatriya. Kshatriya is actually spelled K-S, Kshatriya, like that. Kshatriya, they are like the political class, you could say. Yeah, managing society, including the warrior class. Yeah. And just for, interest's sake. Kshatriya, as a Sanskrit word, it is a compound word. Compound. Shat and Triya. Or Shat and the root is Triyate. In this context becomes Kshatriya. Shat means pain, hurt. And Triya or Triyate means to protect. So someone who protects others from pain, from being, abused, basically. and your current day, Господин Putin, and the police force, the army, etc., etc. This is, in essence, like the Kshatriya element in society. Then the third is Vaishya, V-A-I-S-H-Y-A, Vaishya. Basically means like a business class, or including agriculturalists, people who have their own farms and who are producing stuff from the land, and the industrialists. And then you've got Shudras. Shudra, S-H-U-D-R-A, Shudra, is working class, labor class. So now the caste system, as it still exists in India, although, it's broken down a lot, but it's still there, means if you are born in a family which traditionally is Brahmin, intellectual, scholarly, educationists, priestly, if you're just born in that family, you're accepted. And that's the highest class. Brahmin, they're the highest. So you're an important guy. And I'll be frank, I have met people born in Brahmin families, because I've lived in India quite a lot, and I lived there, maybe 3 months a year for the last 40 years. And I found people born in Brahmin families who even have the family name, the surname Pandit. You heard that term before? Pandit. Pandit means scholar. Yeah, scholar. Who are illiterate. Who actually I can speak some Indian languages to some degree. Hindi being the main Indian language, but they could read, I found a few who could read Hindi worse than me. And my Hindi is worse than my Russian too, so watch out if I start speaking Hindi to you. So this, in Vedic culture though, well in the caste system as it exists, this kind of, degraded even form of Vedic culture which is there today, the idea is your position in society is established and it's permanent and no one can change it simply on the basis of the family you're born in, and that's it. End of story. And no one can do anything about it. But actually in Vedic culture, in Bhagavad Gita, have you heard of Bhagavad Gita? It is the probably best known of all the Vedic literatures. In Christianity we have the Bible. In Judaism you have the Torah. In Islam you have the Quran. And whatever else. I was up in Yakutsk. Not Irkutsk, Yakutsk. There they have the Saha people. They're kind of Asiatic type people. They have a literature called the Alan Ho. You heard about that? Anyway, yeah, there you go. So, but the Vedic culture, we're talking about a whole culture. All the different elements and aspects of the whole way of life of everyone is rooted, really like solidly rooted in the Vedic scriptures, which are God-centered. God-centered. So Bhagavad Gita Bhagavad Gita actually is a part of Mahabharata. Again, I don't want to get into too many sort of different types of terminologies, but Bhagavad Gita is very famous, very, very famous of all the, Indian traditional writings. So in Bhagavad Gita, the point is made. Here's a little Sanskrit, a little more Sanskrit for you. Chaturvanyam maya srishtam. Chatu means four. What's four in Russian? Chitiri. Here, look, this is Sanskrit. Chatur. Yeah. Anyway, there are many interesting connections here and there. Chaturvanyam. Varna is the Sanskrit term which is devolved into caste. Chaturvanyam maya srishtam. Maya means by me. Srishta means created. And this, according to the Vedic literatures, this is God speaking. And he's saying that the four orders, four categories of human beings have been created by me. What does he mean by that? Well, this is Vedic culture. This is very Vedic culture. It means, and think about this, it's really interesting. When I was a young person like you, and I got introduced to these things, I was a student of philosophy. And I encountered these thoughts. And I thought, wow, hey, this is really quite something. How's this? It is kind of natural. Kind of. It's not necessarily just cut and dried, it's just like that. But it's kind of natural that you get some people, they're more intelligent, they're more intellectually inclined. It's just like that. Whereas some people, they're more like the warrior or administrator or governmental type person as just a type of personality. And some people, many people, they're just into business, making money and how to make a buck. Because money is the honey. That's a little slogan for you from America. Because money's the honey. So how to wheel and deal and find something to sell and make some money and build it up. It's just, it is part, the conception in Vedic culture is that it is part of the human condition. It's not something adopted. It is part of what is built into the system of human beings that you get these categories. And finally, the fourth is just the people who they'll just work. And they're not really ambitious to become rich or powerful. They just want enough money to just live, kind of like the working class. So, like I said, it's the caste system which is being derived from what is called Varna Ashram in Sanskrit. The caste system means you're just born in such a family, and it doesn't matter what you are, even if you're illiterate, literally illiterate, but you'll still be accepted as an intellectual. It's a lot of nonsense, unfortunately. But the fact that these basic, in a general sense, types of personalities exist in human society, it's kind of self-evident to some degree. At least if you look a little carefully, you'll see that there are these certain main types of groupings of people. And And it's just part of human nature. As this is what Vedic culture will tell you at least, that it's just part of human nature. When you're a human being, what do? You stand up. You don't go on your hands and knees like the animals. You stand up. It's part of the human condition. You can speak intelligible, not just noises. Intelligible, understandable, vocalizing specific words and like that. Part of the human condition. We have 2 eyes, 1 nose. Part of the human condition. We can walk. Every child at a certain point after some months just starts walking, whether you like it or not. They just start walking because it's part of the human condition. But you don't find in history, there's not been a child who started flying. Right? The birds fly, but it's not part of the human condition. So Vedic society, Vedic culture includes conceptions like this. Really sort of going down to the root of what is humanity, centered on God, but not just in this sort of time check. Oops. What time must we finish? Regina? What school can we?
3:20.
3?
20.
3:20. Sure. You're going to have me going on at you.
It's 10 to 3 right now.
Half an hour. Huh?
It's 10 to 3 right now.
Yes, I know.
And,
Yes, but no, it's not.
and I suppose we have some time for questions.
Well, no one stuck their hand up yet. Zoop. Feel free, don't feel shy. Look, I wrote a couple of books. Anyway, just get them there. That's it. Okay. Yeah, so Vedic culture, like I said, it's God-centered. So you can use the term religion just in a sort of broad sense, but it's not just a religion like I think how people generally think about religion. In so many cases, people just think religion means, okay, I go to church on Sunday and I just pray and then I go home and life just goes on as usual. I mean, not all Christians feel like that. Many are very sincere, but in many cases, I mean, my family is an example. That's what it was about. It was, not a tremendous interest in going deeper into it. And it's more like a belief system. Sometimes we are approached, and I'm approached, and asked, what do you believe? The person who brought the Vedic tradition to the Western world 50 years ago, actually, 1965, Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Sometimes if he was asked, what do you believe? Sometimes he would say, I don't believe anything. I know. That's a kind of scientific type of basis, right, to think in terms of, yeah.
Just heard this idea.
Sorry?
Just heard this idea.
The idea that of?
That you don't believe, but you know.
I would say, certainly it's an ideal, and in many ways, there are many things that I feel I know. He was a very special person. But there's certainly some things which I would say I believe. But I would tend to assume they're true because a number of the things which I believed before when I was kind of new to all of this and not experienced, it was also like, it wasn't so clear, but then it became clear. And this example I just gave of the classifications of human beings, like I said, these are broad ideas, not necessarily just, just like that, and just like that, just cut and dried. Cut and dried. It's an old English idiom. But, if you think about it, and I think you'll see there's quite a lot at least to be said for it, as something which some people might think is a belief, but it's more, there's more to it than just being a belief, like a belief in the sense of believing something which is just unknown and beyond our perception. Thank you. Regina.
I have a question. So as you said, you were born in a Christian family,
Right.
and I brushed through Wikipedia and found that the Beatles played a great part in order to make you understand a new way in your life. Am I right? Is Wikipedia right?
There's truth in that. There's some truth. Okay, let's go in a lighter direction. Thank you. You know what Regina means too, don't you? That's right. Queen. Okay, let's go down that route a little. When I was your age, or when actually I think I was 18, George Harrison specifically, he got into Vedic culture. In fact, he had got into it before that, 66. He got involved in what's called transcendental meditation. It's a particular grouping, a particular organization in the sort of under the broad umbrella of Vedic culture. So that was 66, as I recall. Then in 68 or 9, he became involved in the particular branch of Vedic culture which I'm involved in, Hare Krishna. Right. He became involved in it. And he became very, very, very involved and very serious. And all the Beatles did. Actually, yeah. And even Paul McCartney. Heard of Paul McCartney? Yeah. Paul McCartney, he's still into it. He's very into it. Ringo less, but he's around somewhere. So George produced a record and helped the Hare Krishna people in London to put together a record, which was the Hare Krishna record. I don't know if you've heard it. That was 1969, I think. And it's just the singing of the Hare Krishna mantra with musical instruments, and he was playing on it. And it became top of the pops, top 10. And I was a big top 10 man. Before the Beatles, I was into Elvis Presley. Before the Beatles became known, so I'm from that sort of era. But it was top of the pops. And I was completely into the top of the pops, totally. And so, yeah, so I appreciated it, and it was on the radio regularly, and so on like that. Then, that was 69. Then I actually got involved, I sort of took it up in 73. 73. I met our spiritual master in Auckland, April 72. Then I went to London and I got involved in 73. I was living in the place, temple there, and George would come. Yeah, he'd call around every few weeks, every month. He'd just drop in. He was just one of the guys, actually. He was very unassuming, no like feeling of importance. But I got to know him a bit, a little later, just a little, mainly 79. I remember visiting George at his house outside London, end of 1979. Went and visited him. And we're talking about so many things and how he got, he was into motor cars. I don't know how much you know about the Beatles, George Harrison. He really got into motor cars. And, while I was a student, I was also a journalist. I was a journalist. I worked as a journalist for 3 years and studied mainly philosophy at Auckland University. So George knew that I was into motor cars, and he was like a motor car fanatic. So we're talking about motor cars. And then that one time at the end of 79, we're talking about this and that and motor cars and Bugattis and Porsches, and he drove Porsches. And he told us how he got into meditation, which is, a very foundational part of Vedic culture, focusing the mind spiritually, meditating, in that way achieving peace of mind, and it's really nice. And it helps students too. So George told me, and particularly how he got into Hare Krishna as such, which is just one part of the greater picture. But anyway, he really got into it. So George told me, listen to this, I think this is interesting. He and John Lennon were on a boat trip, a boat cruise in the Mediterranean, and they had been in India a few times. This was, I think it must have been 68. They'd already been in India a few times, and they chanted many mantras. Mantra, incidentally, is also a compound word, Sanskrit word. Man means mind, and tra, like kshatriya, tra is the same idea, to deliver. A sound which delivers the mind from its absorption just in everyday phenomena. So they'd already chanted lots of mantras and been into yoga and meditation for a few years. And the Hare Krishna mantra. And George told me, they woke up one morning and they just decided, hey, let's sing Hare Krishna. Yeah, why not? Just a casual decision. And they picked up their guitars. It was about 7 in the morning and started singing Hare Krishna. Yeah. 9 o'clock came. And someone came and said, it's time for breakfast. They didn't stop. They just carried on. And they just carried on. And then like 1 o'clock or so came, and someone came and said, hey, you didn't have any breakfast. You've got to come for lunch. They didn't stop. They just carried on Hare Krishna all the way. And then later, maybe 6 o'clock or something in the evening, someone came and said, "You didn't eat breakfast or lunch, come and have some ujin." Supper, for those of you who don't understand my Russian. But they didn't stop. They didn't stop. They just carried on. Yeah. George was kind of very proud of this. He really, it meant something to him. And he told us he carried on till 5 the next morning. What's it like? Just Bez как сказать? Без остановки. Without stopping. And he said, the experience, the experience was just so powerful. Just so powerful. On his heart, on his mind, his emotions, just on his being. The experience was so powerful that he decided, right, that's it. There's something along those lines. And he really got into it. He really got into it. And he was really nice. George was really nice. Really nice guy. And George was a really intelligent guy. You couldn't pull the wool over his eyes. Familiar with that saying? Pull the wool over a person's eyes means to fool them. You couldn't fool him. He was sharp. He was really sharp. Yeah. I tell you another person who is marginally, but definitely was, really into these things, really into it, was Mick Jagger. You know Mick Jagger? I can't get no satisfaction. I saw them live in 1965. Yeah, so one of my friends was visiting him from time to time, and he had one of these bags which we use, have meditation beads, prayer beads. So he had one, he would wear it around his neck quite a bit. Mick Jagger, Sir Mick. I don't know how they knighted him, but anyway, Sir Mick. And he would pull out some, excuse me for saying, marijuana, and say, "Would you mind if I smoke while we chant?" Anyway, okay. He does not represent us. Yeah, Eric Clapton. Yeah. So, well, while we're at it, we have maybe another 10 minutes or 15. Any comments or questions so far? As I said, my friend here, Valera, who's from your school here, she told me that you're extremely intelligent. I would not lie to
Can I
you.
ask you?
Please, go ahead.
My name is Lydia. I guess you're a vegetarian. Yes?
Correct.
So am I.
Vegetarians.
So am I.
Positive
Okay.
Good choice.
Do you feel yourself healthy and happy as a vegetarian?
Okay, thank you. Good point. You know, I actually became vegetarian when I was younger. You know, I got into Vedic culture, 72, then 73, seriously. I was 21 at that time. I'm born in 1950. Wow, what's going
So
on?
have a little count.
Maybe it's some special arrangement. So, yeah. But I became vegetarian, I think I was maybe 17 or 18, something like that. Before, you know, I didn't know much about Indian or Eastern culture. But I noticed because, you know, I was brought up as just your typical Westerner. Typical, very typical. You know, eating meat at least a couple of times a day, if not 3 times. But then I just stopped. Actually, my younger brother, stopped. And he influenced me to stop. And I just stopped, you know, dead. And what I noticed, it was like vivid, very clear. I noticed over a period of about 2 weeks, there was a very significant change. Just like physiologically, physically, and psychologically, emotionally. And it had nothing to do with Vedic culture. Although it's part of Vedic culture to be vegetarian, but I just did it because my brother did, and he was telling me, come on, you know. So I thought, oh, all right then. But I noticed it because, and here we're kind of straying into another area, but scientifically speaking, biologically, physiologically speaking, the human anatomy, digestive system, is fairly typical of an ordinary vegetarian creature's digestive system. Check on Google if you don't believe me. You can trust Google. I'll get you up to speed on that. But yeah, we have a long intestine. I think it is 12 feet, I forget all the details. Whereas a carnivorous, you know, actual meat eating only, carnivorous body, animals, digestive system is I don't know the measurements, but it's a fraction of the size. It's kind of direct, in, out, done. Whereas vegetarian creatures' digestive systems, it goes in, it goes down, it comes up, it goes around, it goes back, it goes that way, and etc. Something like that. Yeah. So anyway, you know, feel free to check that on Google or anywhere else if you want. But that was my experience, and I was surprised. I couldn't believe it actually. I was astonished. Yeah. That physically, yeah, emotionally, and also in terms of thinking. I would say my thinking became less kind of cloudy and more focused, or I became more easily able to focus. These are just like objective experiences that I've had, and I recommend it. You know, I'm not here to force anything on anyone actually, but I definitely recommend this. If nothing else, give it a try. See what happens. You haven't got a lot to lose. Thank you. Как вас зовут?
Lydia.
Lydia. Hey. Thank you, Lydia. Спасибо вам большое. Okay. Еще один или два или три вопрос.
While they think.
May I ask
Okay.
a question?
Yes, indeed.
I've mentioned that something is painted in your forehead.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Okay. Right. Yeah, see, I am a priest, basically. Yeah, I'm like a priest, at least. Teacher, priest. And in Vedic culture, what is done often is that people who are in different positions or situations in life, they wear different markings on their foreheads. Yeah. There's a range, there's quite a range of different markings on the forehead in terms of different types of people and their situations. Like a very, very extremely common one, and you know, if you go to India or see Indian television or something like that, no, you'll just see it so much every day, every hour you'll see, is that married women, they will wear generally a red dot on the forehead. And the more traditionally minded will, married, their hair will be parted in the center. And there will be, they call it kumkum vermilion. It's just a reddish powder in the parting, which shows, it signifies, this is a married woman. Yeah, yeah. If a young woman is engaged to be married, not married yet, but you know, she's moving down that path, then she may have like a sort of multicolored type of little thing on her forehead. It's called bindi, B-I-N-D-I. Look it up on Google. Yeah, it's called bindi. And when a girl is just unmarried and she's just a young girl, you know, living with a family, then she will generally wear a black dot on the forehead. Now, this marking indicates that I'm like a priest in a particular, I think as I said, a particular part of Vedic culture which accepts God to be a person. In English called personalists. In Sanskrit called Vaishnavas, which literally means a worshipper of Vishnu. So the Vaishnavas, particularly more the priests, and you know, just the sort of general congregation and general followers, they often do wear this marking. It's two markings. One's on the forehead. Huh?
Two stripes.
Well, it's two stripes, but then there's a marking on the nose, the top of the nose. Mine may have worn off. But there's like a leaf shape, almost like an arrowhead type thing. And the leaf represents a sacred leaf. It's called tulsi. Tulsi. Yeah. And to wear that generally means you're like a priest or something, a teacher at least. Yeah. And these markings are traditional markings in India of temples of God. If you ever go there, you'll see on many of the temple domes the big spires over the main part of the building. You'll see there are these markings. And it indicates that this is a temple of God. This is a temple of God. And you know, it's a practice going back until before recorded time, Western recorded time, going back thousands of years. Very, very long time. You'll also see, you know, if you sort of acquaint yourself a little bit with Vedic culture, you'll see that there are people who wear something similar, but across the forehead. Across. That means they are basically impersonalists. They regard God as not being a person, but more just sort of like energy, light, something along those lines. Or they worship a person called Shiva. Shiva. In Vedic culture, and again, we don't want to go off into too much technical stuff which may conflict with anyone's sort of the ideas anyone has, but in Vedic culture, the understanding is that there is God, but beneath him, it's like he has a government. Like it's not just Mr. Putin, even though he's, очень сильный человек, but he's not a one-man show. He's definitely not a one-man show, right? He has a whole team, a big team, huge team actually, massive team, because it includes the policeman in the street is part of the team, actually. So this is the idea. God has his team, who are more like hands-on managers running the different departments, the water department, I mean literally actually, and the different departments of life in the universe. Yeah. So Shiva is one of those persons, so to speak, in the government. Have I lost any of you on that one? Is anyone sort of, as we would say in my youth, freaking out a bit? You don't want to, don't want to overdose you with too much of this. Anyway, is that okay? Yeah? That's basically what it is. Yeah. Regina, please.
While students are thinking, we are informed that you are not only a traveling monk, you're also a writer and a director of some movies, films. Would you tell us about your experience as a writer?
Okay. Yeah, I've written a number of books, sure. 2 major books. This is one of them here. Anglийском. Govardhan. What does it say? I haven't got my glasses on. Home.
Исполняющийся желание.
Right, that's what it says. Yeah. Govardhan, the hill that fulfills all desires. I wrote another book from the same series. No, we've only got that one here. I've written 2 big books. And I've written some diaries of my travels, going here and there and meeting interesting people. And who knows? I may include you in my diary. Okay, right. This is the other book, actually the first one of the big ones, major books I've done. These are both books about two particular sacred areas in India. I could even point them out right there on your map, but it might be a little small. North central India. South of Delhi. Delhi being the capital of India. About 130 kilometers or so south is an area called Vrindavan. Vrindavan. The thing is, it's an area. It's about 80 square miles. So it's a whole region. In the center of the area is this town or small city called Vrindavan. In that small town, it's a town, there are many sacred places. Many sacred places. and different artifacts, historically significant and interesting things from the past. And this is in fact where Krishna lived when he was on the planet 5,000 years ago. So, yeah, that's this book. And then there's this one, Govardhan. It's in the Vrindavan area, in the greater Vrindavan area, and these books, they're mainly photographic. I'm actually a bit of a photographer. Any of you into photography? Yeah? I used to have a Hasselblad. You know what a Hasselblad is? It's a pretty cool camera. H40, 50 megapixels. So like this, have a look at this. What do you think of this? Oops, sorry about that. This is, thank you, sorry, excuse me, a sacred lake in the Vrindavan area. It's called Kusum Sarovar. Kusum means flowers. Sarovar means lake. The lake of flowers. Pretty amazing name. And really beautiful place. It's really incredible. And that's it at a different time of the day. Captured with a Hasselblad H40 50 by me. This is actually, would you believe, look, you know anything about megapixels? Anyway, it's about 150 megapixel picture. Yeah. Panorama. Six 50 megapixel images stitched together. So that's what these books are. And yeah, it's about this hill and all the different places around the hill, important sacred places. This hill, just for interest's sake, it's 23 kilometers around. It's kind of long and narrow. And every day, like today, now, right now, how do you say it? Prem сейчас or prema сейчас? Prem. Prema сейчас. Prema сейчас, I can guarantee, and it's a Saturday too, there will probably be at least 10,000 people walking around that hill. At least. Barefoot. Because in sacred places, that people generally go without shoes. Because shoes are kind of, they go everywhere. So as a sign of respect, they walk around the hill. It takes depends how fast you go, but 5, 6, 7 hours barefoot. Yeah. As a sign of respect, walking around this sacred place.
I'm so sorry. The time is over. That was so exciting and interesting.
Well, thank you all. Spasiba Ram Balshaya. Thank you for listening so attentively.
Thank you. There are some special sweets you prepared. They're not so
Well, if you want some treats, please come over here and Mr. Nice will
Yeah, don't miss this.
Don't miss this. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
without your sweet.
Don't be shy.
I will not bite you.